in Rome, nobody really care about advertising. Our creatives, everybody is doing something else, like directing movies or writing books or whatever. And I think this is the strength of the creativity in Rome. It's easy to begin to look what other people are doing and try to copy. We have a bit of a complex towards English creativity. So we look at English creativity and we try to copy. And I think this is not good. And what we try to do here is just to look inside our culture and trying to make a real good Italian creativity.
Non basta una televisione per fare una TV.
Most of the time when you have two creative directors, you have people fighting. On one end, we don't have the time to fight because we are few people and we have to work all the time.
Terrible. We work together, it's I think 12 years, 13 years, so I mean it should be good, otherwise it won't last so long.
The first word she answered to you was terrible. And your question was, how is working with Marco? And she answered terrible. It's true.
He's always saying she's just an art director, because of course he's a writer, and every copywriter thinks to be more intellectual than the art director, just looking at the figures, you know.
Honestly, I don't know who's the real boss, and I suspect I'm not the one.
You grabbed my hand and twisted it so.
I don't like to tell creatives to think at the whole world. I prefer to tell them to think to people, to real people. If this people is from Holland or from Sicily, it's not so important as the fact that these people has to exist in the reality.
That's Amore is it's a brand that we developed right here, like as personality and communication, and it's a real Italian brand.
Per me è bellissima. Per me lei si muove come il mare.
Food is very, very important for Italian people, and this campaign we are quite proud about it because we developed like a different kind of creativity for food, which is really in connection with our culture.
Per me ogni suo centimetro è una porta sul cielo.
Sometimes we are in front of clients. We have a huge heritage in their company. But most of the time, creative people consider this a kind of you know, of a dead sign on their work. It's important to underline that the communication there is not related to the cars, but to the promotional event, which is something closer to people's life. Because an event is something that's happening, really. It's not a piece of metal with four wheels. Oh, yeah. We choose a very young director, a very talented girl who is 22. and so the director herself has no overstructure in her mind, has not so much expertise, and is not so much bored you know, in directing commercials.
Then you'll learn to play the piano. When you're even bigger, you'll study law and become an important lawyer just like Daddy. You'll marry a rich girl and your children will be beautiful like you. So I'll be a granny. And I'll live happily ever after at your house.
Yeah.
We think that the idea is not a great idea until it's on the screen. So you have really to care about the last part, because sometimes you have something good on the paper, but this time until it's on air, it's very dangerous. So we like very much production. We spent a lot of time about this, about music, about lighting, about everything.
Is it a crisis? Is it a crime?
We dedicate every time a lot of attention and of thinking, first of all, to the music choice, because music has become one of the main ingredients of the tone of voice in a commercial. Is the moment in which the brand comes under your window and sings for you a serenade. And it's a very delicate moment. If you do a mistake at that point, the windows won't open.
नया सेंटर शॉक हिला के रख दो।
Media in general makes fun of certain people because they fit into a certain category, or people just think that they're like a failed actor or they're like a hack or something. But we totally don't see it that way. Like there's other rich layers to these people that are like fascinating that we'd like to explore.
You want to be hypnotized?
TV Carnage is a way of knowing what not to do if you make films or if you're involved in any sort of creative process. It's just, if you see anything you're doing starting to look like TV Carnage, then you just say, I'm a hack. my friends and I have kind of like radar for like shitty TV, right? So we tend to turn the TV on while the midget is bouncing on a transvestite's stomach to like a Bob Marley song. But I mean, it can come from anywhere from like something that's supposedly highbrow, you know, to, you know, CNN or 60 Minutes, right down to like a Filipino variety show on like cable access, right? You never know.
If you want to lose weight, if you want to be thinner, if you want to block fat and sugar and be a weight loss winner, cheat and eat is what you do. Cheat and eat, gonna do it for you.
TV in general is just everybody's audition tape, which is great. I want everybody to keep doing that. Keep speaking your mind without thinking. Keep writing and directing and producing things without even giving it a second thought. You'll make myself and all of my comrades incredibly happy.
A crazed fan attacking from the crowd, and this time the target is one of daytime's hottest hunks, Michael Damian.
I think it's amazing that, you know, somebody became incredibly proactive. I believe that's one of the buzzwords these days. Ooh, that's nice. And got up out of the audience and wanted to jump on stage and jump all over the person singing. And I mean, it's Michael Damian, and he's like singing a song, and he was on a soap opera, and there's a guy in a Soundgarden t-shirt attacking him. I mean, you couldn't write that.
What are you expecting to see?
Just like, you know, the cesspool that is television, really, and all the best of it, you know, so I'm really looking forward to being nauseated.
It's totally a different venue if you want to showcase your work. Show it at a porn theater, it grabs people's attention.
I don't think there's much of a difference between bad TV and pornography.
Since I've seen them, I notice like how crappy TV is now, like a lot more. Like I'm almost obsessed with just watching like crappy TV shows.
Kate, you're smiling.
How did you know?
Oh, I know a lot about you.
It's not about us, so we don't want people to know who we are, because it has nothing to do with us, really.
He's not allowed to do this. Like, it's totally illegal. Like a million people could sue him, and who cares? Like, it's fun, so let's do it.
I promised him a squirrel sandwich, and that is what he's going to get after school. You've heard of tuna melts or patty melts. Why not squirrel melts?
People walk away having their own interpretation of what they've experienced as far as it being good or bad or pleasant or unpleasant. So TV content just speaks for itself. The stuff that's on it is just what's there.
We used to brag that we could do anything that J. Walter Thompson could do and do it better, and it was true. So somewhere around 6, 7, 8 is what it takes to run an agency as well as it can be run. The rest of it is bureaucracy. There are a lot of things that in the public service area that we don't do. We don't do cancer, you know, we don't do the disease of the month. We tend not to take on an issue where there's nobody on the other side.
Before our kids start coming home from Iraq in body bags and women and children start dying in Baghdad, I need to know, what did Iraq do to us?
The answer is nothing. Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11, nothing to do with Al-Qaeda. Its neighbors don't think it's a threat. Invading Iraq will increase terrorism, not reduce it.
It would be wonderful if we could replace the fourth estate, whose responsibility it is to get the word out about what's going on and tell the truth. They're not. I think that the fourth estate is part of the government at this point, and they're just as bad as any state-owned news medium. So it's up to people who are willing to contribute this money to be the fourth estate, to point these things out.
If we invade Iraq, there's a United Nations estimate that says there will be up to 500,000 people killed or wounded. Do we have the right to do that to a country that's done nothing to us?
The right wing has totally captured the media outlets, so that in order to get a consistent left opinion heard, when we just found this out in spades in the case of the war in Iraq, in order to get a left message out, you were driven to buy your freedom of speech.
No nation under God has that right. It violates international law. It violates God's law. War only creates more terrorists and makes a dangerous world for our children.
A.J. Liebling was asked, is there a free press in America? And his answer was, there is if you own one. So advertising, advocacy advertising is a way to own a piece of the press. And as long as you don't lie or insult the publisher's wife, they will run it.
How effective do you think your ads are?
Yeah, well, I mean, we certainly didn't prevent a war, but I would hope that we raised the conscience of enough people to realize that our leaders aren't just to be taken at their word anymore. I mean, there are ulterior motives for what they do, and people don't understand that. It isn't black and white, and there's a lot of gray and a lot of things going on that everybody isn't privy to because they don't look into it. We just hope that by reading some of these ads, they'll question their leaders, they'll question whether or not maybe there is more to this. And so if I could raise the conscience of a number of people, I think it's doing it.
It takes 2 years to develop a game, probably minimum, from scratch. And by the time you're getting towards the end of those 2 years, things have changed. So the challenge is trying to be able to stay ahead of what's expected, what's being done by other teams.
Fantastically democratic technology can make a small amount of people a lot of money.
The number of gamers have increased enormously over the last few years. It's become less of a bedroom hobby, you know, and more sort of mainstream and acceptable, and people can actually talk about it, which has really helped. And Sony drove that forward with their PlayStation, which actually became kind of part of rave culture in Britain, and that really pushed it forward to be a trendy thing to do. The industry is very fast-paced. I mean, the PlayStation 2 came out in 2000 when we started making Cricket 1, and things changed through the development of that title. The tools would change, what the users' expectations would change as people were able to push the technology forwards. So even through the lifetime of one console, the PlayStation 2, you're forever developing, and even through one project, you're forever moving forwards, trying to make things better. You have to, because it's what the users expect, what other people are doing, so you have to be able to match up.
Problem solving, that's what it's mainly all about. You're given a task and you have to figure out how to make it work, how to make, say, one person get from point A to point B, make it look realistic. So it gives the user, a suspension of disbelief where they feel like they're actually really controlling the player, and it really seems fluid so it seems lifelike.
Every character is made up of a bunch of triangles, really, but you can see them here as squares. And so the more polygons you have, the more memory intensive it is. It's going to slow it down if you've got a whole bunch of characters on it. So if you pull back in the game and you see a whole bunch of players, you go to the lower poly models, and they can, get in there, and the gameplay is more smooth. But when you have a cutscene, then it just jumps back to the high poly guy. So you get that better detail.
The Rugby World Cup's already incredibly popular elsewhere, but I think it's taking off a lot more in North America, particularly for the football fans. Maybe it's a rough, tough sport, but no one's wearing pads.
For a sports game, you want a big demographic, and rugby certainly has that. Maybe not so much in North America, but especially in Europe. And North America is growing now in terms of a market for rugby. But the demographic is probably the biggest thing for a sports game, the biggest selling point.
Maybe 5-6 years ago, gameplay was really all that mattered, but now people expect the visuals to be incredible, and then they worry about the gameplay. So now it's really gameplay and visuals side by side as being the essentials for a good game.
You can swap in 22 different faces or about 8 different hairstyles, so you can try and make up a whole bunch of different characters. So there's one of the guys.
Lunenburg's a little isolated, so there's one P.O. box for the entire town. There's only 3,000 people here, so it's a small community, but we keep ourselves occupied with work. So it's really easy to be focused here, so that's definitely a benefit, I guess.
The atmosphere within the studio is essential to us producing a good game. We have to interact with each other all day, every day, and it gets pretty stressful at times when we're getting to deadlines. And everyone has to be friends as well as be co-workers.
There's a lot of work to be done, so it's generally pretty quiet, but everyone's very focused as much as possible, and a lot of times we just tune out in our headphones.
During the peak times, we put in a lot of time, but in the end, the product, it's something to be proud of, so it's pretty cool.
I absolutely love the idea that you can make a product and know that when it's all finished, 500,000 kids or however many buy it, hopefully 500,000 kids are out there playing it and enjoying it. That's definitely the reward.